May I kindly remind you about the importance of being switching off your phone so that you are not distracted and the mobile phones don't distract others. So to fully benefit from this conference, let's keep our phones on silent mode, please. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 2 of the Teaching for Success 2025 conference. I hope you all had a restful and enjoyable evening and are now ready to immerse yourself in another day filled with insights and inspiration. Throughout today's sessions, you can expect to continue getting expert insights and information to spark your curiosity, which will hopefully be followed by meaningful conversation and discussions during and beyond this event. Let's not forget about the importance of networking. During breaks, take the opportunity to connect with fellow attendees, exchange ideas, and find a common ground for potential collaboration. We're now going to start the day by the first plenary session planned for today, which reflects one of the hottest topics nowadays in all spheres, 21st century skills integration, benefits and challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome back our esteemed guest speaker, ELT expert Christopher Graham, who will discuss the key 21st century skills and explore their application to learner engagement with sustainability topics. Specifically, it will focus on these questions. What are the 21st century skills? What are the benefits for the learners of integrating them into our teaching? What are the most effective ways of developing and practicing them? And what are some of the challenges around the 21st century skills? And how can we resolve them? Please welcome Christopher.
Hello again. How many people here are here for the first time who weren't here yesterday? Okay, there's a few. And the others are old faces. I don't mean old, I mean old faces, not old faces. Have to be careful with the intonation. Okay, it was interesting that in the introduction, the kind of importance of networking and getting ideas and all this stuff. That's better. I'm over microphones today, but there we are. I was thinking last night, which is not always a good thing, but because for me it's 6:05 in the morning, so I'm a bit jet lagged and I didn't get to sleep till about 2 o'clock. So when I was trying to sleep, I was thinking about why do we have these events? Why do we do it? Conferences and all this stuff. And I was reminded of something, and I haven't gone mad, so just stay with me as I tell you the story. Years ago, I had a girlfriend. That's not the end of the story. There's more to it than that. But her great uncle was a bishop in the Church of England. I won't say which city. It was one of the big cities. I mean, he's long dead. He's been dead for many years. Anyway, she had this uncle who was a bishop. And we got invited to dinner with the bishop at his palace. Bishops live in palaces. Who knew? I mean, I'm not a religious person. I'm a humanist. This was a completely new experience for me. And I'd never met a Okay, and I'd certainly never been to a bishop's house before, and I'd certainly never had dinner with a bishop before. This was all new stuff for me. Anyway, so we went for dinner, and I was sitting at the table, and I sat next to the bishop. And he was probably then in his 70s, I suppose. He was quite elderly. So, I mean, my opening gambit with people who I don't know is always to say, how's your week been? How are things going this week? I don't know why I asked that. So I said to him, Bishop, I didn't call him Bishop, I called him something. I said, how's your week been? And he looked at me right in the eyes and he said, absolutely dreadful. That wasn't what I was expecting. I was totally thrown. The bishop said, do bishops have bad weeks? He said it was terrible. I think it was the Thursday or Friday we were there. So I thought, well, I better ask the obvious question. Why? what's gone wrong this week, Bishop, to make you say this? He said, well, he said, on Monday, it was either Monday or Tuesday, he said, I went to visit a primary school. You know, bishops visit primary schools. And he said, I did a talk to the children. They showed me their artwork on the walls. I spoke to, normal stuff. And at the end, he said, I always say, does anybody have any questions? And he said, nobody ever asks a question. Except this time. A little boy said, Bishop, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah, sure. So the boy stood up. He said, Bishop, do you believe in God? And he said, my immediate reaction was say, of course I do. I'm a bishop. Yes, absolutely, I believe in God. The little boy was happy. The little boy went home. The bishop went home. And he said, I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Because nobody had ever asked me that question before. Because I've always done this, and no one's ever asked me that question. And you'll be glad to know that he decided that he did actually believe in God, which is good given the job that he chose. That's okay. Now, what does this have to do with English teaching conferences? Well, quite a lot, I think. Because it seems to me that events like this are an opportunity for you to ask yourself really big questions. I mean, for a bishop to be asked, do you believe in God, is probably the biggest question they can be asked. And it's very interesting, he didn't sleep because I don't know, I suppose. Anyway, he figured out that he did. But what I'd like you to do, and it's not for you to discuss, but for you to think about some big questions about your practice as a teacher. We're not going to discuss it. It's an internal conversation. There may be, remember we had this quotation yesterday from the American Admiral who said, the most dangerous phrase in the English language is we've always done it this way. There's probably things in your teaching that you've always done it this way. Maybe it's time to ask yourself, is that actually the best way to do it? Or is there something about the English language that you've never really understood? Something I've never really fine. Or, as I say, it could be your approach, it could be your understanding of the language, it could be lots of things. And I think that's what events like this are about. They're not to make you feel insecure or not to give you imposter syndrome. That's not the idea. The idea is to make you really think, well, I've always done reading comprehension like that for the last 15 years. I wonder if there's another way. Or I've never really understood the subjunctive. I mean, frankly, who cares about the subjunctive? But anyway, I've never really understood it. Maybe it's time to. So all these kind of considerations you can think about. So maybe when you're going home tonight, or if you can't sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, you might ask yourself those big questions. I constantly ask myself big questions. I'm not going to tell you what they are. But I think it's quite a useful thing to think of the bishop who had 3 days of doubt. And you can have 3 days of doubt about whether you're doing listening comprehension in the best way. So that's what I was thinking. That's probably why we do these events. There's a lot of noise coming from somewhere, isn't there? I don't know where, but anyway, I think they're moving furniture upstairs, aren't they? So this morning, and later on with the workshop this afternoon, we're going to be thinking about these 21st century skills. I'll just change the slide across to the next one. There we go. Now, somebody said yesterday that she was interested that I tended to talk about yesterday what we teach rather than how we teach. And I've always been much more interested in the what than the how. The reason is I think most of us as teachers figure out how to do it. The first year is pretty disastrous usually because we don't really know what we're doing. I remember some of my first lessons. They were awful, really bad. But second year you think, okay, I remember. And then third year, and as you get older as a teacher, you get better. Arguably, when you get to a certain age, you start to plateau and go down. I don't know, that would apply to me. But I think certainly we get better. So I worry less about the what, and I'm more interested in the how. Because the how is the thing that's more dynamic, isn't it? Because the world is changing so fast, and if we are going to reflect the world that our students live in, then we've got to keep up with that. And 21st century skills kind of bridge the two, between the what and the how. Hopefully you'll see what I mean. They're partly what, and they're partly how. But there's something that's been appearing in course books, I suppose, for, I don't know, 8, 10 years, even a little bit less than that. And even now, a lot of teachers aren't quite sure what they are and why we have them, what's the point of them. So that's the kind of thing that I want to talk about today. And this morning, at least, and this afternoon, we'll do similar to what we did yesterday afternoon, try to make some activities and stuff. And I have to say, looking back at yesterday afternoon, it was a bit of an experiment for me, because normally if I do a workshop, when there's people making things, we have about 15 people, 20 people. We had about, I don't know, 250, I think, yesterday. But I think it actually worked quite well. You were very well behaved. Well, quite well behaved. It was quite interesting for me to do that with a big group, and we got some interesting ideas from 5 or 6 people, I think, and I'm sure there were others who I didn't ask. So we'll do something similar this afternoon. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Let's start off with a little bit of background to 21st century skills. Well, the first thing about them, I think, is the name sounds a bit dated now, because, hey, this is the 21st century. We're 25 years into it. It's not been a great century so far in many ways, but anyway, we're here. So maybe maybe we need to think of another name. I've no idea what it is. Soft skills, some people call them that. Just sounds a bit, doesn't matter much. Not very important. I don't know. It's a name that people use. Life skills, well, I don't know, because it's a bit more than that. So maybe I have no idea. Maybe we need to think of another name. I think one of the publishers, I think it's OUP, call them core skills, but I don't like that either. So, as I say, 21st century skills, when you're 25% into, here we are, we're into the century now, it sounds a bit outdated. And how long is it going to be until we start thinking about, 22nd century skills? I mean, none of us will ever see them, but I don't know. So I think the name's a bit of a problem, but we can't really change it. This was actually the original structure, or the original vision of them. There was this organization in the US called P21 who actually more or less invented this idea of 21st century skills. And they've been bought by various organizations. Now they belong to this organization with a very strange name, Battelle for Kids, which looks a little bit too much like battle for me. But anyway, that's the people who own this structure now. And you see, life skills is, I should explain, I'm colorblind, so this is completely useless for me. But life skills is a thing that I think is blue. The top part, which is possibly green, possibly orange, I'm not sure, learning and innovation skills, that the 4 C's, that tends to be the thing that we're most familiar with. Those of you who've looked at 21st century skills before might be aware of these 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. And they're the ones that are most commonly kind of discussed in ELT. But the one on the other side, information, media, and technology skills, I think are also very important in our area too. So that's the kind of original construction, and there's, you can find it online, and there's lots of discussion on their website as well. So for me, it's the one across the top, the 4 C's, and the information, media, and technology skills that I think are the most useful for us, in the situation, the context that we're in now. Maybe we need some new ones too. We've got creativity, communication, collaboration. We've got all of those: creativity, critical thinking. What other skills do you think our students need? What would you add? Any ideas? Yeah. What do you mean? I mean, I understand the words, but for students? But do students need pedagogical skills? But we've got the 4 C's, we've got communication, we've got collaboration already. Okay. Not in day-to-day conversations. Okay. I don't know what we could call that, but I understand what you mean. Any other new skills? Anything else that's missing? Yeah, at the back there. You learn by teaching, basically. Interesting. So we've got this idea. I mean, I absolutely agree. I think peer teaching is a really useful tool. But I think in life in general, being able to explain things to other people is actually really useful in the workplace. You go to a business or company or NGO, wherever, to explain to people. I mean, I often meet people who are not teachers, and maybe you do as well, and you watch them trying to explain things to other people, think, oh, they have no idea what you're talking about. You're not making the topic interesting, you're not simplifying it, you're not kind of making it your explanation cyclical, so you're not revisiting it to check it, you're not checking they've understood, or you're saying, have you understood, when people always say yes. Absolutely, I agree. It's a nice idea, thank you. Any others? Yeah, lady here. Ooh, emotional intelligence. Absolutely. Daniel Goleman, the creator of emotional intelligence, we mentioned him yesterday. I think that's very interesting. Absolutely. And it's been, I mean, it's sort of come into English language teaching a bit. But I think the problem with emotional intelligence is the word emotional worries people. It scares people, I think. So you'll see some course books do address it. But I actually agree with you. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, over there. We've already have that. It's one of the 4 C's. We already have creativity. Don't worry. Yeah. Yeah, I think learner autonomy is very specific to the classroom, but I think taking ownership of things is important for life. Taking ownership. I might want to use the word responsibility, but that also scares people as well. But I think the idea of ownership or autonomy. Okay, one more this side, yeah. Sorry, who's? Okay. Individualization, yeah. Okay. Absolutely, I agree. Lady at the back here with the glasses, yeah. Okay, no, I agree. Flexibility, I think, definitely. Any from this side of the room? Yeah, down here. What about as a skill for students? I think you're right. I think self-awareness. I think creating self-awareness in students is really important. I mean, we've all got these friends or family members who have zero self-awareness. They just go through life destroying things, basically, and because they have no idea about other people. They don't care, and they drive like that as well. You can see people who drive like they are the only people on the planet. There's nobody else there. So self-awareness, yeah. Reflective skills, absolutely. Reflective practice. It's a life skill, absolutely. It's a life skill. Whether it's people think conflict resolution is to do with wars, it's not. If you've ever been married, you know about conflict resolution, you know, or have a family at all. It's kind of day-to-day event, isn't it? So, okay, one more, and then I'm going to definitely time management. For me, time management is linked to empathy, because for me, time management is about your relationship with other people's time. I know there are cultural issues. Armenians always joke about being late. I know, and you joked about it yesterday. It wasn't too bad. But if you've ever been to the UK, and I'm sure Eddie will, having experienced this himself and working in a British organisation, you cannot be late. Just don't do it. You can just about get away with 5 minutes. But after 15, 20 minutes, they'll say, I'm sorry, you're too late. Go away. One more, go on. Now it is. These are some of the things that I thought about. I mean, the list we had 12 ideas. We probably get 50 ideas if we tried. I think intercultural awareness is a thing. It's just moving into language teaching. Intercultural awareness is walking on eggshells sometimes, because there's a big risk of awareness, intercultural awareness, moving towards stereotyping. The problem with stereotypes is they are often true. It's a very complicated territory. It's easy to say, oh, there's Armenians, they're always ing. And I could say that. I said, no, it's not true. And I said, oh, actually, yeah, you may be right. But how helpful is that? For me, intercultural skills is about empathy. It's about understanding the other person's position, understanding what matters to the other person. Having discussions around time. There's an example. You know, time is a big, big driver in Germanic cultures, Anglo-Saxon cultures. You know, our lives are driven by time. And sometimes you have to have a conversation with people. Say, look, you really can't be late here. It doesn't work. You're going to get in a mess. Other cultures, there are other considerations. So I think intercultural skills, translanguaging. Now, translanguaging is one of these buzzwords that's come into ELT in the past 5-6 years. I've engaged in lots of lively debates with people about what translanguaging actually is. Nobody really knows, which is the trouble with some of these terms, and how is it different from code switching. Translanguaging is generally considered to be a way of showing respect for the speaker's first language or first languages, and not totally discouraging its use in class. Now, there are a few Armenians in London, quite a few I think, and I imagine they are masters of translanguaging. You know, you'll see, I mean, the best examples that I know would be particularly Greek Cypriots. London is full of Greek Cypriots. You go into the shop and you just listen to them, and they start a sentence in English and then they go into Greek and they finish it in English, because certain things they want to talk about in Greek and certain things they want to talk about in English. That's translanguaging. It's a perfectly natural thing to do. So I think it's a really interesting area, but it's not very well defined. But if you're interested, you can find it online. Emotional intelligence, somebody suggested. Yes, I absolutely agree. I'm quite a fan of Daniel Goleman. I think he's a very interesting writer, journalist. As I say, it started to move into English language teaching, but people are worried about the word emotional. They think it means people crying and walking out of rooms and slamming doors and things. It's not that kind of emotional. For me, the word I use most is stakeholder. The second word I use most is empathy, because I think empathy is just everything in language education. It's everything in life, actually. And I think it's very much tied into that, seeing it from the other person's position, the other person's perspective. And eco-literacy, which is also actually developed by Daniel Goleman in California. Yeah, understanding the world we live in. We said yesterday, talking about seeing things that are happening to the planet in the parts of the world you don't live in. Because just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening over there. It's not happening over here. So I think that's an interesting one. But many of the ideas you suggested we could add as well. I mean, you could probably get 50, as I said. So they're the ones that I think, but I mean, there could be many others. But first, 21st century skills are slightly under attack. A lot of people don't believe in them. A lot of quite prominent people in English language teaching don't believe in them, which is interesting. I've been to lots of arguments about them. Some people say it's just a way for publishers to sell books. It's a name that you put on the back. Oh, we've got 21st century. Oh, it must be a good book. I'll buy it. ELT is very prone to gimmicks. Learning styles was the biggest one. We believed learning styles for about 20 years. Learning styles, remember, the whole idea of different learning styles is based on zero research. It's basically fake. Actually, it's been just recently, the British Council have done a paper on it. It's completely fake. Yet for years we believed in it and we taught it. It's now been removed from the CELTA syllabus. It's been removed from all sorts of syllabuses because we believed it. Some people think that's the same about 21st century skills. I think 21st century skills is a genuine area. Teachers say it's not, again, we had this yesterday, it's not really my job. I'm teaching English. I'm not teaching communication. What do you mean you're not teaching communication? You're teaching English. That's communication? Well, I'm not teaching collaboration. Do you have your students working in groups? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's collaboration, isn't it? Oh, okay. So, which a point I'll come to in a minute. We're doing it anyway. Students don't care about them. Well, if you've ever taught teenage boys, they don't care about anything. There are lots of things students don't care about. But I actually think students care more about something they see as practical. They probably care a bit more about that than they would about the famous third conditional, which I keep talking about. Why do we need them? Why we've got enough to teach. Now you tell me we've got to teach critical thinking. Oh, no, I've got to teach climate change. Too much for me. But I think most importantly, where are the examples? Where is the practice? That's one of the problems. Course books have we've got 21st century skills. Fantastic. And you look through the book, I think there's just a box saying 21st century skills. How do we practice it? How do we understand? And that's what I want to look at today. It seems a bit theoretical. I don't know if any of you have heard of Philip Prouse. He is without doubt the best ELT blogger there is. His link is at the bottom there. He's a British academic at the university in, I think he's either in Vienna or Graz. He's in Austria. He is not diplomatic. He says what he thinks. And it's quite easy to read his stuff and say, yeah, but it's horrible. And then you think, yeah, but he's right, isn't he? And if you just read that for a second, I mean, the first paragraph, there isn't much critical thinking about critical thinking. We've decided it's a good idea, so we're going to do it. And his conclusion there, he mentions learning styles and multiple intelligences, both of which are invented. We may be doing the wrong thing, but for the right reasons. He's saying we're very well intentioned, but we don't know why we're doing it. I do recommend that you, when you get the slides, which BC are going to send you, you click on that link and subscribe to his blog. I mean, he's completely outrageous sometimes. All the publishers hate him. A lot of other people hate him. But you read his stuff and you think, yeah, he's actually right. He doesn't care. I mean, he's probably in his 70s. He doesn't care what he says. But I think it's interesting that he says here, paragraph 1, the last sentence, teachers are no more immune to fads than anyone else. A fad, remember, is something that's fashionable or trendy or new. And we all get excited about it. We actually don't know what it is. But we really like it. But if you say, what is it? I don't know really, but it's good. That's the problem. So I do recommend Philip's work. And he's critical thinking about critical thinking. That's a nice one, isn't it? Oops, sorry, out of control. Things to think about. In course books, the skills that are often practiced presented in isolation. It just says critical thinking. Sometimes you actually see in a course book, critical thinking is when we think critically. Yeah, obviously. I mean, that's why it's called critical thinking. And that's all you get. We're going to push that down in a minute. A lack of examples, ditto. There's no examples of it. Not much chance to practice. And very importantly, they are very hard to assess. How do you assess critical thinking? I mean, I can assess grammar. I can assess comprehensibility. I can, to some extent, assess listening skills. I kind of can do that. Thinking, however do you can't see it, can you? It's kind of hidden away up here. Yet, we like to assess things. So we'll explore that as well in a minute. So, why do they matter? I took that photograph near where I live in Scotland. Why do they matter? The AA thing is the Automobile Association. It's the organisation, if your car breaks down, you call them. Now I've got an app on my phone. If my car breaks down, I press the app and they come and rescue me. They used to have these boxes all over the rural areas in the UK, which were with a telephone in. But you had to break down in the right place or walk a lot. But I mean, this one is just there at this place, it's just as a monument. But all over rural Scotland had these boxes. So you had to plan where to break down. But the whole point about breaking down, of course, is you don't plan it. It just happens to you. Anyway, that's why I thought it was quite funny that they still have it sitting there. So, we're teachers before we're English teachers. We spoke about this yesterday. So why are they important? Well, I think if we're clever, we can actually use these 21st century skills as a motivator. They are linked to employment. You know, employers do look for people who can engage, who can solve problems, who can work in teams. I mean, my oldest son is, he's 26 now, and he works, I'm ashamed to say, for an AI company. After what I said yesterday, but I see his salary and I'm thinking about my pension. I'm not ashamed anymore. But he got the job when he was 24. Like every other 24-year-old, he was a bit, I don't know what am I going to do, you know. And now he's a team leader. He's running teams he's based in London. He's running teams in Canada, in Austria, all sorts of things, doing something I don't understand. So they kind of get it. You know, he very quickly became someone who could run a team of people. He had to learn. He had quite a steep learning curve. But I think teenagers understand that's what the workplace is now. It's teams of people. So it's a potential motivator. If you can do this, you're going to get a better job. You're going to earn more money. You're going to do whatever it is you want to do. Study skills. You know, critical thinking is a core study skill. If they're going on to university or to postgraduate, whatever they're doing, it's an obvious skill. You can use that as a motivator. Employers know what 21st century skills are. So they're good for employers. The digital world is driven around self-motivation and solo activity. You know, a lot of the time, my same son, he goes into the office twice a week. The rest of the time, he could be anywhere, usually in his girlfriend's flat in Nottingham with his computer, leading his team. And that requires a very high degree of self-motivation. AI, love it or loathe it, I loathe it, as I keep mentioning. I think critical thinking about AI and the way we use it is very, very important. It is not a search engine. The environmental impact is caused by people using it as a search engine. Yeah, as was mentioned about Vicky Sama's talk. And we need good brains at the moment. We've had COVID. We've got a climate emergency. We've got wars all over the place. And probably, I fear, another one coming. We need people with good brains and good skills to deal with this, as I said yesterday, to clear up the mess that we've made. So let's think. How can they be taught and practiced? Well, the great thing about 21st century skills is you are demonstrating them to your students every lesson, maybe without knowing it. If you have your students working in groups, they are collaborating. That's what it is. That's all it is. All you've got to do, the boss says to highlight the applications, is say, when you've finished the group work, say, okay, what were you doing? We were talking, yeah. How were you talking? Were you helping each other? Yeah. Were you sharing ideas? Yeah. Okay, remember we talked about collaboration? Yeah. Well, that's what you were doing. Oh, that's that talking thing. Yeah, that talking thing. So you're doing it already. 3 students working together on a reading text is problem solving. You're doing it already. Project work, if you're getting them to make a poster or write a blog, all the stuff that we do is collaboration, communication, creativity, and possibly critical thinking. You're doing it already. This is not new, different labels. Autonomous learning, you're doing that already. It's called homework. You know, what I'm saying is, all we have to do is to say, stop, look, what did you just do? Oh, we worked together, we made a poster. How did you work together? Oh, we collaborated. Did you think about the subject for your poster? That was critical thinking. So they get it. Only if you point it out to them. And course books absolutely fail to do that. Your modern EL, whatever that is, contemporary ELT methodology is effectively employing 21st century skills. So you're demonstrating it every day of the week to them, or bits of it every day of the week to them. You've just got to say, stop, think about it. So we're collaborating now. Yes, you're working in a collaborative group, just like they do in banks, government offices, airlines, NGOs. This is what people do in the real world. Oh, okay. So I think that's something to think about. Pictures. Now, I took this photograph at Paddington Station in London probably about a year ago. Pictures are brilliant for critical thinking. What's happening? The clue, I don't know what's happening in this picture. Because I was taking a picture of two police officers, I did take it quite quickly. But I was really interested. What's happening, do you think? This is a busy railway station in the morning. What do you see? What's happening? Say again? You think he's a tourist? He could be. Okay. Critical thinking, remember, is looking at things and turning them upside down. He could be a tourist, but I don't think he is. You think he was stopped? Possibly. Any reason he might have been stopped? Yeah, that doesn't work in law, in legal system. You look suspicious. I mean, I look suspicious, but they're police officers. Don't look at the man. It's not the man you've got to look at. Not the civilian you've got to look at. Why is he without a helmet? Respect. Police. What country do you live in? This is a secret that British people never tell foreigners. But I know some of you are coming to the UK, to Edinburgh, I'm telling you now. Those hats they wear, they can't run in them. You can't run with those hats on because they come off. That policeman has been running. Otherwise, they always have their hats on. He's been running and he's holding. He actually looks a bit kind of red, doesn't he? Our policemen are famously not very fit. They can't run more than about 5 meters, most of them, which is another useful piece of information. He's been running. Now, I don't know whether he was running after that man. I don't think he was. I think he's getting some information from that man. That man does not look like he's about to be arrested because he'd be by now. So that policeman has been running because he's holding his hat. That's all I know. Sorry? I suspect he might be a witness. He's either a witness or somebody who's reporting a crime. I don't know any of that. But that photographs are fantastic for that because you are all speculating. You are all critically thinking. Is he a criminal? Is he a tourist? He could be any of those. But I have the inside information about policemen and hats. They can't run in them. They also can't get in cars with them either. They are, in fact, completely useless traditional hats, but they still wear them. They're useless. They have to take them off to get into a car. They can't do anything. So that's photographs like that you can have a lot of fun with. The students don't know. They end you say, what were you doing? Well, we were talking about the picture. How were you thinking? Oh, I don't know. Thinking about that. You were critically thinking critically. Oh, okay. That's good. That was quite fun. So you can do that kind of thing quite easily. I now want to look at sort of a case study of critical thinking, particularly, or wider 21st century skills, surprise, surprise, around sustainability. I think sustainability lends itself quite well to critical thinking because it's complicated. There are lots of complicated issues, and some of the findings, some of the actions about sustainability are quite controversial. Ultimately, I suppose, if we really want to save the planet, we need to completely change our lifestyles, all of us. But we're not going to do that. So, there's controversial discussions. Multiple stakeholders with differing opinions. Different people have different opinions about it, depending on who they work for. People who work for oil companies tend to have particular opinions because that's where their money comes from. There's loads of information and misinformation about climate change. Time is not on our side. The planet is burning, we know that. And complex messages need to be communicated accessibly. And communication, for me, is understanding the audience. thinking, who's going to read this? Who's going to listen to this? I need to make it accessible. And that's a really basic thing for students to understand. Just because you understand it doesn't mean that they will. So, therefore, 21st century skills seems quite a natural thing. So I've got a little case study here around cheap fashion, or fast fashion, whatever people call it. This is what you can do with it. Project for teenage and adult learners. Start off with some bits of data. The fashion industry is responsible for more than carbon emissions for all flights and shipping combined. The fashion industry is one of the most destructive on the planet. All the dyes, all the chemicals, the fact that we can buy clothes relatively cheaply. There is a cost for that at the other end of the production. It's fairly disastrous. That's a source from Princeton University in the US. It's a verifiable source. So I give the students data like this. And there's another piece of data there about ethical fashion. But there are two things to think about. One is about ethical fashion. One is how we look at how the people who make the clothes are treated. Are they paid properly? Are they in safe environments? Do they have holidays? Do they have health care? In many cases, the answer is no, which is why the clothes are cheap. And also, the climate crisis talks about pollution. The fashion industry is very pollutive because of the chemicals, disposing of all the chemicals that dye our clothes, basically. So, these are the kind of activities you can do with students. We've got critical thinking and collaboration, plus information and media skills. You get students talking about where do you get information from, what the key issues are, and differing interpretations of them. Because the thing, particularly around critical thinking, is for students to understand that different people have different opinions for different reasons. People who run big fashion companies have their position because their clothes are only affordable because they treat people badly. That's kind of a given. Otherwise, their business model collapses. So that's their opinion. But people working in Bangladesh, for example, in these horrible factories, have a very different view. No sick pay, they're working 12-hour shifts, 2 bathroom breaks a day, all that kind of stuff, which is unacceptable to me anyway. So teenage and adult learners can engage with this kind of guided critical thinking in groups, collaborating, and also information skills, which was on the other side of that table, that infographic I showed you at the beginning. Information skills is understanding that information is not fact. It's just stuff. It's just words. What matters is who put it there and what their position is. And that's the danger with Google. I mean, I've always taught students how to use Google. You know, the first page these days is adverts. Someone's paid to put that there. Oh, it was on Wikipedia. Yeah, so I can put anything on Wikipedia. I could put on Wikipedia, Armenia is the hottest country in the Northern Hemisphere. And it would stay there probably for about 25 minutes before somebody corrected it. But nothing would stop me doing that. And somebody who went there said, Armenia's a really hot country. I know it is in the summer, but it's not that hot. So that's something for students to understand. Oh dear, going wrong this morning. Information, media skills, translanguaging, and critical thinking. Sometimes students have to understand this idea of fake news, that things are just made up. Just because it's delivered as news doesn't mean it's news. I mentioned translanguaging because sometimes with these topics, as I said yesterday, we might have to allow students to read a text in their own language to get that complex information. I don't have a problem with that. Say, okay, you've got the 5 facts now, the 5 pieces of information. Let's work on it in English. I don't care if they read it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes in Armenian. That's good by me. That's fine. Because it would take us a lot longer to get there otherwise, and then we can engage in this. Why are things reported in different ways? Like newspapers have agendas, companies have agendas, charities have agendas. And this is really important skills for people coming into this 21st century. Just because it's in a newspaper does not mean it's true. It's just getting engaging with that awareness, developing that awareness. So information skills and media skills. Collaboration and creativity. What local action can be taken to reduce our impact on the issue and broader climate challenge? What can be done nationally, internationally? How can we get involved? Collaboration, creativity, what can we do? In the UK, there have been a lot of campaigns by consumers, by ordinary members of the public, to big shops to say, you prove to us that you're paying your workers properly. And many of the shops, some of you who've been to the UK may know Primark, which is a large, it's actually Irish, but it's very big in the UK, a massive cheap clothes shop. You can buy a t-shirt for £5, $7. You can do that. But they have videos, films, documents that show, apparently, people working in their factories paid properly, with healthcare, sanitation, decent working hours, because people bullied them. People just said, no, we're not. I'm not paying £5 for a t-shirt if I know someone suffered from it. Now, whether that's genuine or not, I don't know. That's where the critical thinking comes in. But what local action can be taken? What can we do about this problem? It could be any problem. Doesn't just have to be fashion. Collaboration, communication, and intercultural communication. Sharing the findings. What are you going to do? Clarifying and correcting misunderstandings and falsehoods. Evidencing and calls to action. Getting students to understand you can't make a statement if you can't prove it. Where's that come from? Is that source reliable? And teenagers get that. And if university students don't get that, we've got a problem. Because they've got to understand this source has to be reliable, genuine, provable, and I can evidence it. A Wikipedia is not a source. Because like I said, anyone can put anything there. It doesn't matter. It's not necessarily checked quickly. And also getting students to think about the best medium. Is it best to do a presentation, a poster, a blog, a vlog, live stream, all the different media that we have available to us now work for different contexts. Notice how the skills interact and connect working in parallel. Remember, the 21st century skills don't work alone. They're all mixed up. We communicate, we collaborate, we create, we think critically to get the information, all at the same time, all mixed up together. They're not discrete skills. So I think that's important to understand as well. I always try to put a positivity on any kind of project. We're doing this to make something better, whatever that something is. Otherwise you get what we said yesterday, whether it's about the environment or about anything, it's just people think, oh, I've just had enough of this negativity. I mean, people say we shouldn't talk about politics in class. I think that's changing now. Students want to talk about wars and conflicts. I mean, they seem to be everywhere anyway. But for me, it's how we can see a way beyond that to a happier place, basically. The local angle is important. We talked about that yesterday. And remember, every project has to have an output, a blog, a poster, a presentation, whatever you choose. So that's a fairly simple project around fast fashion. That website, Climate Fact Checks, is brilliant. I don't know who those two men in the middle are and why they should be on a fact-checking website, but surprise, surprise, they are. That's a great website. Around sustainability, it will tell you if that's true or not, basically. It's a really good site. There are lots and lots of fact-checking websites. And I think university students need to have them. They need to know that they're there. Greenwashing, we talked about yesterday, remember? Greenwashing is the way that organisations basically lie about how environmentally friendly they are. I told you Heathrow Airport in London says it is a carbon zero airport because it doesn't count the aeroplanes, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But they say, no, but they're not our planes. Yeah, but anyway, that's greenwashing. That's a great UN site about mobilizing youth to drive towards climate action. I mean, I'm just putting these here as kind of context for you. When you get the slides, you can click through. Really interesting stuff about getting teenagers involved with climate activities. The main challenge, and I've got about another 5 minutes. Yes, you're not going to? Oh, okay. I'm very scared of her, you see. She might throw something at me. What are the challenges? Well, I think the challenges around 21st century skills are mainly around assessment. How do we measure it? First of all, say critical thinking, there is no right answer. That's the whole point. You might say, this is what we should do. You might say, no, this is what we should, and you can both be right or you can both be wrong. There's no right answer as such. And sometimes we need to separate critical thinking skills from character and from language level. What I mean is, if you have a student, if your class is B1 and one of your students is C1, they'll be possibly the most vocal because they're the most confident, and you might think they are the best critical thinker. They're not necessarily, they've just got the best English. Not the same thing. So that's when assessment gets really blurred. Her English is amazing. Yeah, but what's she actually saying? Does it indicate that she's understood this process? Or has she just got good English? Equally, there's usually a guy, it's nearly always a boy, a male, who just wants to demonstrate how good his English is, even if it's absolutely disastrous. He wants to show how good his English is, probably to impress one of the girls or something. But again, that doesn't mean, just because he's very vocal, makes a lot of noise, doesn't mean he's critical thinking. I mean, it might be, but that's not good enough for me. So we've got to somehow separate 21st century skills from language level, from character. And that's not easy at all. Because we as individuals tend to react positively to those who have the best English. We kind of, something in our DNA, oh, her English is really good. Yeah, but she's talking nonsense. She's talking absolute rubbish. Whereas this woman who hasn't said anything, I've seen her notes. They're amazing. She's the one doing the brain work. So, how do we manage that? And it's not difficult, not easy. And also transferable skills. I mean, in some countries, 21st century skills are taught in government. Are they taught here in government schools or not? It's not on the syllabus. I mean, some schools, some countries, it is. It's on the syllabus. So they're learning it in their first language. So it's a bit easier because you can kind of refer to that and the skills are transferable. You can say, well, you do this in social studies or whatever, or Armenian or languages. But no, if you haven't got it, it's new forms. That's another complication. Should we assess them as part of our ELT assessment? Or should we assess them separately from the language or integrated with it? These are kind of questions that I don't think I necessarily know the answers to. Assessment gives it credibility. Students take it more seriously if it's assessed. In the student eyes, I'm getting a grade for this critical thinking activity, but I don't know how to grade it. But I've got a few ideas. The argument for not assessing is that some of this stuff is about emotional intelligence. Communication may well be much more connected to emotional intelligence than to English level. This person will be a very good communicator in Armenian as well, because that's a skill they have. It's nothing to do with the language level. So that's complicated. Do we have the tools to do it? And a lot of the 21st century skills require public performance, communicating with a group, doing a presentation, leading a group. Some people can't do that in their own language, let alone in a second or third language. So it's very complicated to get a clear kind of measure. There's a second paragraph, perhaps the most important. A student with a low level of English can be the most collaborative person. It's just the English is a bit shaky and half of it's in Armenian. But actually, she's the one who's really doing it. And the one with the good English is sort of just sitting there and talking a lot about nonsense. So it's how you can separate these out. I think it's very hard. This article here from Irenka Sutta says that you can't measure these skills in quantitative skill. You can't give a percentage. he's a 74% in communication. I have no idea what that means. I mean, the people that say, yes, you can. She's a 63% critical thinker. What does that mean? I have no idea at all. So I don't think you can quantify it. But I want to jump forwards now. That's what we can assess. We can think about the process. In other words, we do this. We get students working in a group to solve a problem. And then at the end of it, we ask each student, tell us what you did. Well, first of all, the leader of the group asked everyone our opinion. Then we wrote the opinions down, and then we compared the opinion. And if you think they're following a nicely structured process, regardless of the English, they're doing it. You can assess that. You can evaluate that. I remember at school in maths lessons, we were always told to show our workings, not just the answer, but how we got to the answer. I never got to the answer, ever. But my workings were clearly nonsense, but I always wrote it, and they still do it now in maths at university as well. And they've got the same thing. Just because you get the formula calculation right doesn't mean you've understood it. But showing the workings will show the process you went through. You can get the process right and the answer actually wrong. That's fine sometimes. So I think that's something to think about. Self-assessment with structured questions. As I say, saying to students, what did you do? How did you figure this out? How did you understand that? Who talked about this? Who talked about that? That's a process that you can follow and you can evaluate as well. This article here talks about think aloud. So when you ask the students to think aloud. Well, we spoke about this. Then we looked at the article. Then we took two sides, one for, one against. These kids have got process. Great, they're doing it. I can evaluate that somehow. I can't give it 75%, but I can say it was quite effective, very effective, something like that. I can do that. So there are ways of measuring it. Oh, that's something I wrote. I'm not going to bore you with that. But again, it's the idea of having students working in groups of 5 and evaluating. Okay, those are the references that you've got there, and you'll get that there. I'm there because I did a book about 21st century skills a few years ago, which you're very welcome to buy, though I won't profit from it anymore, unfortunately. That's it from me. Well, I'm on time, look at that, isn't that amazing? So I'll do that. I'll see if you've got any questions. Quick questions. You know, they say silence is the most dangerous noise in the jungle, just before you become something's lunch. I shouldn't mention lunch. Any questions? You don't have any questions. Yeah, question.
Do you really believe in the mission of the education that you carry and you want to spread the word?
Huh. I'm quite passionate about it, yeah.
But I don't want to spend sleepless nights just to share.
Well, you should. Sleepless nights are good. Actually, it wasn't last night at all good. Jet lag nights, yeah. I believe it all, yeah. If you don't believe it, the students are never going to believe it. Really, you're in the wrong job. I think if you've no passion for it. Any other questions? Or compliments? I like compliments. Oh, there is a all right, okay. Somebody somewhere.
I just want to express my huge gratitude for this mind-blowing conference and for the immense information I get now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's fun. I like doing these things. All right, nobody else? Right, I'll hand you back to your capable hands.
Thank you. Yeah, that should be. Yes. Would you like to okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Christopher, for your engaging and really thought-provoking presentation. Now we have a short break until 11:15, and the concurrent sessions will start at 11:20 sharp until 1 o'clock. Please refer to the conference booklet for information and details. You will have lunch break until 2 o'clock, after which we're going to gather back again in this hall for Christopher's next workshop on the 21st century skills in your classroom. But before you leave this hall, can we have 3 volunteers. Can 3 volunteers approach Ade for a short video interview? For a short video interview. 3 volunteers, yeah. Okay, yes, thank you.